I'm Dan Morris, you're watching Bosun Dan Bushcraft, and today we're not doing anything particularly fascinating. We are going to take a look at a common problem with the pixie lamps. Now, this video is really only being made because I've had questions, mostly on Instagram actually. I've got a couple of people who keep talking to me about lamps on Instagram, want some advice, want some information, and that's fine. I don't mind that at all. That's the whole reason I started this sort of lamp series that I've basically done. I never intended to do a lamp series. That's the way it's gone, and we're going to keep going with that off and on alongside all the other crazy videos we've got going on, as in the bike tours and all this and the other. Now, I appreciate sometimes for a lot of people these things might not be what you're looking for today. Cool. If it's not up your street today, skip it. My channel's not solely strictly limited to one thing. We do jut and jump about a bit. But pixie lamps, and a common problem that you will get with a certain type of pixie lamp. When you're purchasing these things, it can be next to impossible to know how old they are, what time period they are. They could be reproductions, they could be made last week for all you know. It's nigh on impossible to tell without inspecting it personally. A couple of the ones that I have, there are telltale signs. The number one being underneath them, it doesn't say that they're made in a certain country. It literally says foreign, as in not made in the UK market. And one of them literally says Empire made. Well, you know that's got some age to it. This one doesn't have any maker's marks on it whatsoever, but I know with certainty that this one is a modern reproduction. I know that because of a couple of different things, namely the way that the thread fits to the actual ceramic bottom. It doesn't thread on very nicely whatsoever. Naturally, making a threaded ceramic is a difficult thing to do, but the older ones would have been made at a time when quality control still existed, and there would have been somebody testing it, and the ones that didn't thread nicely would have been on the scrap pile. The ones that did would have gone off to sale. Nowadays they just use them all. You've got to work with it. One of the other big problems that you get with the reproduction ones is the wick carrier tube. Now, anybody who's watched my video on the 275 baby lamps, the Fjord hand ones, you'll know that wick tubes can be a bit of a nuisance depending on how well they've been made. A common issue with the reproductions, particularly on these pixie lamps, is that the wick carrier has not been made particularly well. And as you can see at the moment, this one is behaving itself quite well, quite stable. However, once it warms up, it's going to start flicking and flashing, and that's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse until it puts itself out. Right, so now this one's warm, you can see a problem. What is the problem? The problem is fire. It's exploding out of the wick carrier tube, and that has encouraged the flame to turn gigantic and be a big smoking mess. And you can see it woofing and coughing and coughing and woofing and woofing and being a pain in the bum. And the only cure for that is don't use the damn thing. There's your problem. Now, what's causing that problem? If I can just get a light on the situation here. There we go. Now, if you look at the wick tube, you see, can you see how, I don't know how close I can actually take the GoPro without fuzzing it all up, but you can see the line down the wick tube. That's basically the seam of the tube. And if you look, it's very hard to do this, I need an extra hand. If you look, give me a pokey stick to show you. Ready now. So you can see that line there goes all the way to the bottom, and it's not closed as much as it should be, mainly I think with this one because they've actually stuffed a wick in it that is a little too fat, and it's opened that up, and closing that shut is going to be an absolute nightmare. And there is like a bigger opening at the bottom of the tube there where it almost looks like it's cracked. I don't know if I hope this shows on camera. It sometimes does, it sometimes doesn't. That is a major problem, and it means that this lamp's never ever going to work correctly whilst it still has that problem. But unlike a lot of them where the wick carrier tubes actually overlap over each other, which would enable you to be able to sort of press them and clean the space and press them together to make a nice tight seal. These ones, they literally just butt up to each other, so you're never going to be able to do that. But there is a quick and easy way of sorting that out. So the quickest, easiest and cheapest way of sorting that out and making yourself a nice little working pixie lamp, we're going to make a cowl that covers that up. We're basically going to make an outer section for the wick carrier tube, and there's lots of different ways and things and easy ways of doing this. Best one, in my opinion, well, actually, if you're into archery, you might have an arrow just the perfect size and just nip a piece of saw a piece of an aluminium arrow off. It's amazing how many things I've used alloy arrow tubes to do. For this, quickest, easiest way, get yourself a drink cap. This is an old whiskey cap. There's always them lying around with me. I love a good scotch. Any metal bottle cap will do. Because what I'm going to do is, these are made of alloy. They'll put up with the heat because it's not going to get stupid super hot. Obviously you can't use plastic. It has to be some sort of metal. And what I'm going to do is cut a piece of this. Lovely. Scrumple that out the way and cut it off the actual cap. And you can just use scissors for this. You don't need anything spectacular. It's only thin metal, it's not massively strong. Now what I need is something round, and preferably just a slight bit smaller, thinner than the carrier tube itself. What have I got lying around? Pen, too thick. What's that? That's a cable, that's no use. I could probably just get away with using a little paintbrush, really. And all I'm going to do on the thicker part of this lovely little modelling paintbrush is literally just bend the thing around it. Now, it's not quite perfectly round. Doesn't matter at the moment. We've got some excess. What I'm going to do, trim off the excess that we don't need. Ideally you want this to be quite a snug fit on that little tube there, and what I'm going to do is, if you roll with the fold, not against it, you can just roll it across a desk like that, and that will make it almost perfectly round. Lovely. I like that. Okay, and you end up with a lovely little round tube that's should be just snug. And all I'm going to do is literally, I have off camera just made sure it's the height, the same height, and trim the top so that it's not sticking above. And all I'm going to do is just slide that down so that that crack in the wick carrier is completely covered and it can't flick and flash. Now when I light this, it should behave itself. So I'm going to take a 5-minute break and let that get hot, because the thing is like a lot of things in life, like a damaged insulator on a spark plug, or a split in a coil lead, anything like that, a lot of the times these problems won't show until they've got hot. So you might light it at the start and it behaves itself perfectly. 10 minutes later you come back to it, it's coughing and farting and making a big smoky mess. So I'm going to stop recording, give it 5 minutes, have a brew, come back to it when it's nice and hot and at temperature, and see if that has stabilised it and made it behave itself. It's been about 20 minutes now. No flickerage. It's fully up to temperature. It isn't flickering at all. Boom, job done, problem solved. Don't be fooled by the movies. Whenever you see these things, lamps and stuff in movies, they always are flickering and fluttering and faffing about. Kerosene paraffin lamps don't flicker. Candles do. Candles flicker because they are not powered by liquid fuel. It's wax. The wax has to melt before it can be drawn up the wick. On account of this, it has an irregular flow through the wick. It's not a constant speed. With paraffin and kerosene lamps, because they have a liquid fuel, the flow up that wick will be a relatively constant thing, i.e. as long as the air is relatively calm, they don't flicker at all. If you've got them and they are flash flickering, there's a problem, there's something wrong with it. It's almost always airflow or the wick tube causing airflow irregularities. The only other issue that really causes the problem is wicks that are far too dirty to do their wicky job. Excuse me, and that's causing that irregular flow of paraffin. But more often than not, it is going to be a crack in the wick tube, carbon on the wick tube, something that's allowing air to get in there where it shouldn't be, or allowing fuel to get out where it shouldn't be. It's always gonna be the case. And a lot of the times when you have found something like this that is a reproduction, you will probably find your wick is stuck in the wick carrier anyway. If you buy it and it's bone dry when you get it, pull the wick out, turn it around so as it's clean, put it back in. A lot of the manufacturers have a bit of a habit of stuffing wicks in there that don't really belong in there, wicks that are slightly too big. It's up to you. The point I'm really trying to make is, just because you've ended up with a reproduction doesn't mean it's useless. It is very, very difficult to spot reproductions, particularly of these, when you're looking online and stuff, unless you've got photographs really of the bottom of the tank, where if there are maker's marks, that's where they'll be. If you haven't got those photos, it can be very difficult to know what you're actually getting when you look at the pictures. And I've got some that are genuine old ones that have absolutely no maker's marks whatsoever on the ceramic or anything. You've got to think of it as a lot of these lamp makers, they weren't producers of ceramics, so they would probably have had another manufacturer make the ceramic part for them. Now, whoever it was that did that, it depends on how proud of their product they were or how much they care. They may not have bothered putting a maker's mark on it. You've got to think, if you're like a pottery company like Wedgwood or something like that, and you get an order for 20-odd thousand ceramic bottoms because you work in ceramics, you're used to making statues and fine plates and things like that. Are you going to put your maker's mark on a product like that you're sending to another company for them to then use it as a lamp? Probably not, because if the rest of it's junk, if say the other company that's ordered these from you has done a bad job of the top part, people are going to look and go, that's my company name that's now looking poor. So even with a lot of the older ones, they don't always have those marks. But even if it is a reproduction and it's not been made quite perfectly, that doesn't mean it's game over to get it to be a working lamp. These problems can quite often be dealt with. It depends on how into these lamps you are. Now, I do get it, to a lot of people, you might watch this and think, well, if you're not interested in these lamps, then this isn't the video for you. But like I did say at the start, I am getting a lot of questions coming through about this, that and the other. So that is the simplest way to fix that issue with the wick carrier tube as a problem. Sometimes some of them you can just very carefully take a set of pliers and just manipulate the tube back together to close that gap up. Does the same job. This one, no, I tried that, and obviously if you I'm gonna sneeze. Excuse me. If you're trying to press it back together with something and you overcook it, you've just buggered it completely. I mean, to be fair, I could probably make and replace the carrier tube myself. I'm a faffing with these things for years. I do all sorts of metal with it. You got to ask, well, what's my ability? If I squish this, can I do anything about it? If that answers no, just make a cowl round it. Cures the problem straight away. It is a permanent solution. You won't need to do anything else to it. So, you know, that is pretty much my answer to that problem. Cured it. Problem solved. So to anybody out there who may have these things and they are behaving like that, just have a look at where the seam is on your on the wick tube. If you can see any visible space, that's what your problem is, that's what your flickering is. Get yourself a metal bottle cap or any other form of very fine, very thin metal, and sort it like that. You could use tin foil. You could literally wrap the thing in tin foil. It would work the same. Doesn't quite look as good as the nice shiny black metal cap, but it would get the job done without too much trouble. It would do that job perfectly. And you know, that's the thing. A nice permanent solution. You're not going to be worried, oh, I'm going to leave this thing lit, I'm going to, I don't know, go the bog or something, come back and the damn thing's kicking smoke and everything, because these things should never do that. The pixie lamps should never do that. What they really should behave like is a permanent tea light candle. Once everything's fine on them, you should never have a single concern with these things. They're the most stable, calm, lovely little thing that you can see. It's basically just an everlasting tea light, really, and that is exactly how they should behave. But that's it. That's all I need to say. That's all the waffle I need to do. So as usual, guys, get yourselves out there, get bushcrafting, get having fun, be safe. Go and get yourself some paraffin appliances, play with them, see what you can deduce, and I will see you on the next video, which as always isn't planned. No idea what it's going to be. We'll get to that when we get to it. But that is all from Bosun Dan. Imaginary doorway.